am just so honored and so pleased. Many of you know that we've been doing this for a while, but this is the first time we have had our CEO, the sixth president of Medgar College, who just happens to be a woman and happens to be a scholar. She is with us today. I can't hide it. Now, I know I have 20 minutes, so I have to get going, but I want you to know that this is an important moment in our history, that we have our CEO and our president. As busy as she is, she just started on the job. She's got so many things to do, but she came and sit some time with us. So let me just get going. Visions of a better normal for humanity. This is my keynote address, and I will ask you to give me a 5-minute warning. I will ask you to give me a 2-minute warning, and I'll put myself on a timer, because this I can talk about forever, but I don't want to do that today. Our challenge is worldwide income inequity. Our work, I'll talk a little bit about that. Trends in the future from the executives at Cigna, Deloitte, IBM, Mayo Clinic, and Attico. And I'll give you an overview of our new book publication, Future of Work and Entrepreneurship for the Underserved. That's our space, that's our niche where we work in. And hope for the future of work and entrepreneurship, some things from the book, and practical implications and conclusions. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a charge, not just as researchers, not just as educators, but as change makers in the communities and the world we serve. Okay, so I went backwards. Let me go forwards. Okay, this is a cartoon. It talks about what I call the equity jungle. And educators, you can appreciate this. A lot of times when our students come to us, they come to us with different skill sets, different experiences. But in this particular cartoon, it says, the lecturer says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So oftentimes we are asking our students to climb trees that other folks have been, made aware of, and they don't even know exist. So this is the challenge. This is our challenge. Worldwide income inequity. I'm going to talk about the US in a minute, but this is worldwide. The top 10% of income earners in the darkest areas, and that might be a metaphor, but in the darkest areas own or produce or have control of anywhere between 50 to 70% of the income. My challenge to us is the future of work and entrepreneurship for the underserved is a struggle for humanity. And we didn't just get there. We have been there for some time, and everything we have done has not pulled us out of the struggle. And that leads me to our next slide. In the US, since the civil rights, we've had many changes to education. We've had many changes to employment. We have had many laws. But the truth of the matter, my friends, is the Black to white income disparity is greater now than it was at the beginning of the civil rights movement. I am not going to go into all the reason and the issues, but I just want to say everything we have done in the past has led us to this place. And this is pre-COVID pandemic. This is not after COVID. This is pre. As leaders, this is our work. We need to allow ourselves to experiment, try things out, and make adjustments. Leaders navigating the future of work will find themselves experiencing the uncomfortable changes and stages of the creative process. They may also be surprised by what they discover is possible. This is from Jeff Swartz. He is a leader in the Deloitte practice. They have studied the future of work for several years, surveyed many leaders, surveyed many managers, and his new book is called Work Disrupted. And I like the book, and if you haven't read it, I suggest that it's one that you pick up. Okay, so instead of just my voice, I want you to hear from the voice of some of the leaders. I will summarize some of it, and I will go through it real quickly, and then I'll talk a little bit about our new book. Let's hear what John Murato has to say about the workforce and the future.
Having discussed education, let's talk about the workforce of the future. What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the key word, and I don't have the corner on this knowledge because we're all talking about it in my HR world, but I mean, flexibility is is what it's likely to be all about. I think that the challenge becomes how we really optimize employees to be at their best, how we engage them in how they can be at their best and respect what they want to do, and then find a way that find the intersection of what works for us as a company and what works for them as an employee. And so you may have a lot of situations going forward where the majority of a non-manufacturing workforce, for example, could be a hybrid workforce, where it doesn't matter, so to speak, where people are located on a particular day, other than when there's a specific need to be in an office.
Okay, so I'm just going to summarize his tail end of that. He's saying that you may have some senior executives in some of the offices, but the vast majority of the employees may be at home or may be in alternative spaces. And there's an economic benefit to that because many of these corporations had huge campuses, huge dollars tied up in real estate, and it was a challenge. I want to get to Deloitte because I'm going to look at two executives at Deloitte. The first one is Jeff. I mentioned him earlier. He's the author of the book. I want you to hear a little bit about his inspiration of the book, but I want you to know that he says everyone in the future should be expecting to work with machines. Machines are going to be here with us for a while, and they are a part of what the talent base is. This is not just Jeff, this is some of the MIT faculty as well.
I spent the weekend reading your book, Work Disrupted. It's a delightful read, and I commend it to all listeners. So before we get into the content of the book, tell us what inspired you to write it.
Well, first, I'm delighted that you read it and are enjoying it. I think it's a fun book. I've been doing research on the future of work at Deloitte probably for about 8 years. I think I wrote the first article where I would draw a line between leading our talent practice and starting to think about the future of work in 2013. And it was an article that we published in the middle of the year on the open talent economy. And we were looking at different employment models. Now, today, this is totally obvious. We talk about full-time workers, gig workers, freelance workers, contract workers, crowd workers, ghost workers. It was not totally obvious in 2013. And when we started talking about particularly gig workers and the role of microtasks, it was very new. And a couple of years later, we wrote a piece literally titled, Harpreet, Machines as Talent. So this was sort of our recognizing that machines were not just tools. This builds on Tom Malone's research at MIT, but that technology was also becoming part of the workforce, the notion of a digital full-time equivalent. And then in 2016, we actually formally established the Future of Work practice at Deloitte, Global 8 in the US. And what I recognized was that many of the ideas that we were looking at, whether it was employment models or whether it was how people and technology are working together, or whether it was how we think about the workplace, we were moving between what I was describing and I describe in the book as 21st century models and 20th century models.
So I'm going to stop it right here. His main issue is the way that we looked at the models of what we needed in the labor force was different from how the technology and the innovation and the change is pushing us to develop new models as researchers and practitioners. So, but now I want you to hear from the CEO of Deloitte, because this is really powerful. He talks about not just looking at what happens inside his company and trying to drive revenue and profit there, but how to empower communities that the employees come from. Let's listen to him for a bit.
Puneet, let's talk about World Class, the social impact initiative where you seek to empower 50 million people with education and skills by 2030 in the communities in which you are engaged. Can you tell us more about this initiative and what kind of skills you are targeting?
Well, Harpreet, I think when we started work on this a couple of years ago, we thought to ourselves, first off, we're a purpose-driven organization. We're committed to making an impact for our clients, for our people, and the communities that we live and work. And as an organization, we give back into the communities 3% of our distributable earnings. And that is important, but the most valuable asset that we have is the 300,000 professionals that call Deloitte home. So when we looked across the globe, we found that there were a large number of individuals that were being left behind in this fourth industrial revolution. And it varied by geography. And so let me give you an example. So the overall goal that we came up with was 50 million. We wanted it to be a stretch goal so that we could motivate ourselves to achieve something big. 10 million of that 50 million is a commitment in India. In India, 175 million women and girls are not educated. And because they are not educated, they will not have access to a rapidly developing economy. So our commitment in India is to impact 10 million women and girls through education. In China, the issue is the left behind children. As China has industrialized and moved to the cities, these children have been left behind. So our commitment in China is to impact positively these children that have been left behind. In Papua New Guinea, the commitment is for seaweed farmers and educating them on the value that they are creating so they don't get exploited in the value chain. So now the beauty of this is that in every community, Deloitte professionals can volunteer to impact their community in a positive way under the umbrella of world class and under the umbrella of uplifting individuals through education.
And why I put that there, because I am hoping that Deloitte's leadership will be replicated by many of the large companies. Now here we have IBM, and IBM understands that the skills that their employees need will need to be upskilled and reskilled. And so let's hear how they do it.
About upskilling and reskilling. As we know, a very large percent of our population is going to need to be retrained. So how are you tackling that internally? How are you helping IBMers reskill themselves or upskill themselves in the context of AI automation that's in front of us?
Yes, so I'll answer it again, thinking about this on two levels. In technology in particular, the half-life of skills is decreasing. No longer can you get a certification or a degree or a set of skills, and that will last you an entire career. The technology is just moving too fast. And so one of the things that all companies need to do, whether you're in technology or not, is that you need to build as a piece of your culture this concept of continuous learning. It needs to be how your company operates. If you think about it, a lot of the work around growth mindset is fundamentally on that level. That's the way we evolve and work and continue to stay contemporary as humans. But it's even more important for companies to make sure that they set that expectation in their culture so that employees know what's expected of them. But then it's also incumbent upon you as an employer to make sure that you're giving them opportunities to do that. And we've done that a couple different ways. So if you think about, well, how do you plumb continuous learning? How do you make it real in an organization? One of the things that we did was we created an online digital platform. I like to think of it as Netflix for learning. It's called Your Learning. It is AI enabled. It will surface recommendations to you based on your job profile, but it will also show you curated learning roadmaps. So if I said I wanted to be a Java programmer, it would actually curate the entire path and might say to me, Nicole, it will take you 250 hours to have that happen. For you, if you said I wanted to be a Java programmer, it might curate a different set of learning. And it might say, Dr. Singh, it will take you 3 hours. But that type of personalization and customization is exactly what organizations need so that employees can feel empowered and that you're not wasting time and energy and resources so that you're sitting through 250 hours when you don't need 247 of it.
And so IBM, like some of Google and the others, they're now not as focused on the degrees, but they're focused more on the performance. IBM, and she said that in a later part of the interview, 50% of the jobs now that they have worldwide do not require degrees. And this was her logic. 75% of the world does not have degrees, and they, along with some others, they want to be more inclusive of the talent that they are able to compete for and the talent that they are able to bring to market. So now that we're in COVID, I want you to hear just a little bit about what some of the future looks like for the health. And I'm going to just do this one and go on.
Workforce, you've discussed healthcare and how the clinical aspects are often emphasized when people think about careers. If you were to look at from a macro perspective, the trends, what kind of trends are you seeing emerging from a workforce perspective?
Well, I mean, the trend you're seeing, at least in healthcare, it will follow, I call it an employer's choice. So you are getting a lot more kind of entrance into people or organizations that want to help people's health. It could be Amazon, it could be Google, it could be coming from our insurance organizations, it could come from the healthcare services. So you are getting a lot of invention that is in the end trying to figure out how to help people.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here. What she says is that healthcare is becoming commoditized at the low end, where the price point is a commodity, and at the high end, you'll still have some of the researchers and the research that is going on. But let's talk about how do you reduce the inequality and the possibility of doing that here in the U.S.
The welfare model would certainly make sense in the European context because you have the frameworks and the policies in place. How do you see that kind of a model? It's very challenging to do something like that in the U.S., right? So what is your perspective? How does the U.S. Provide that safeguards and security to the gig workers?
It is clear that according to the country and let's say the type of economy you have, is it more liberal or is it more structured? You will have a different attitude. I think Europe has a different attitude towards work than some other countries have. So that's point one. But second, I think that on the long run, if you want to reduce inequality, especially, you need to put in place the proper framework, because also these platform workers, and they can be, let's say, highly educated, at some point of time, they need to reskill and upskill themselves, because today you are losing 40% of your skills every 3 years. And
okay, so what he said is saying that even at high levels, we will need a framework such that everyone will be able to retool and reskill because of the changes that are coming. While IBM is doing it internally for its employees, in the government or other places, we need to have a framework in country to be able to handle the massive needs of retooling and reskilling that is coming down the pike. We have produced a handbook. It was just released yesterday, a handbook on the future of work and entrepreneurship and underserved. You heard many corporate voices that are looking at the issue of the future of work. The drive to create this body of work is to find authentic voices, narratives, and trajectories from practitioners and academics for the future they envision for the underserved themselves. More voices talking about the future and how we can shape and co-create the future as opposed to a future that's just given to us. And so the next slide is one of actually the very first chapter in our book talks about developing a shared vision at the community level to co-create rather than top down, bottom up areas of business, areas of employment by the community. This particular example is Latin America. They had the drug economy in several places. It was the women who said we would prefer less income and be able to keep our husbands, our sons alive. And so they came together and coordinated a different kind of community based on what they wanted to see for their future, not the future that was predicted for a drug economy. So I'm wrapping up now. Practical implications and conclusions. We propose that unity in community and capacity building is vital to create shared prosperities. In our handbook, we share diverse, authentic perspectives on what the future of work and entrepreneurship will evolve in the new normal. It is my hope that trends in the future of work and intentional innovation, thought leadership, bottom up, will yield new outcomes for the underserved such that we achieve a better, not a new, but a better normal for humanity. Our charge, and I said it's a charge, and I know I'm right at 20 because I'm running my clock. Indeed, our communities can serve as laboratories for innovation where we can develop and test reskilling programs, explore the creation of transition nets, and reset local agendas as a precursor to resetting national policy and programs. Again, that is a quote by Deloitte's Jeff Schwartz. I think I've managed to get right in there and under there. I am going to stop sharing my screens. And I knew it was a lot. And, it was like a fire hose, but there is so much to do in this work. We all together have so much work to do. No one should be left behind. Those who are in the communities who live these lives, we are trying to change lives. So oftentimes you'll see people come to the community and tell the community what to do. But if you ask them, if you tell them what their experience is, it was those women that said, we don't want our husbands and our sons to die. Help us save them. And so it's the women that help save the men. And those communities change. It didn't happen overnight. Those researchers worked 25 years, but they were able to change lives. And I say to you, colleagues, that is the work we do. It is our job as educators to also not just do the research, but know that we have a responsibility and an accountability to change the lives in the communities we serve. And I thank you.